Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something pretty significant unfolding in Karnataka, India. It's a new internal reservation policy for scheduled castes. And this isn't just some local news item. It feels like a really profound shift in how social justice is being approached,
Yeah,
with potentially huge implications.
absolutely. What's really fascinating here, I think, is how this longstanding demand, this call for fairness, is finally getting addressed. And it's being done with this incredibly detailed, data-driven method. We're talking about Karnataka's internal reservation policy for scheduled castes. These are the historically marginalized communities that get affirmative action. This specific decision was announced on August 27, 2025, and it impacts, get this, 101 distinct communities. So our deep dive today is about unpacking not just what they did, but why it's so important, the whole journey leading up to it, and, well, what it could actually mean for potentially millions of people. It feels like a genuinely pioneering move in inclusive governance.
Okay, so let's unpack that. This idea has been floating around in Karnataka for what, over 30 years? The core issue being that within the existing 17% reservation quota for scheduled castes in things like education and government jobs, the benefits just weren't spreading out evenly. It's almost like you have this big safety net, but only certain groups within that net were consistently getting the main advantages.
Precisely. And this really highlights a critical point about diversity, right?
Hmm.
Even within a broad category like scheduled caste, there's immense variation. What was actually happening on the ground was that certain subcastes, especially the ones identified as most backward socially and educationally, were just getting, well, overshadowed. They simply weren't seeing the same kind of representation and opportunities compared to some of the more dominant groups within that SC framework. And this disparity, this unfairness, it fueled a really sustained movement. Activists were pushing hard for a system that was genuinely more equitable.
And this push got a major boost from the courts, didn't it? From the legal side.
It absolutely did. There was a really pivotal Supreme Court ruling on August 1st, 2024. The case was State of Punjab and others versus Devendra Singh. That ruling basically provided the necessary legal foundation. The court essentially said, yes, state governments do have the constitutional power to subclassify scheduled castes, the aim being to uplift the most disadvantaged among them. Rooted in Articles 14, 15, and 16 of the Constitution. The court emphasized that internal reservation isn't actually moving away from equality, but towards it, because it acknowledges these different realities within the larger SC group. That ruling really opened the door for Karnataka.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think, because this wasn't just a decision made overnight. The Karnataka government based its whole policy on the work of the Justice Nagamohan Das Commission. And this was just a one-man panel set up in November 2024, but with this absolutely massive task: get solid empirical data on every single one of the 101 SC communities in the state.
Yeah, the scale and the sheer thoroughness of that work are quite remarkable. The commission launched this huge house-to-house survey. It ran between May 5th and July 6th, 2025. Just think about that time frame, barely 2 months. And in that time, they managed to cover 93% of the state's estimated SC population. We're talking about roughly 1.16 crore people. Just for context, a crore is 10 million, so that's over 11.6 million people surveyed. Wow. It was a massive logistical effort. They had nearly 59,000 enumerators, almost 6,000 supervisors. They gathered data on over 1.07 crore individuals from more than 2.7 million families. And the survey wasn't superficial. It really drilled down into key things: educational levels, job status, indicators of social backwardness. It's basically given this incredibly detailed, almost microscopic view of the disparities that existed.
That's just incredible. So all that groundwork, all that data collection, it led to a pretty hefty report, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. On August 4th, 2025, Justice Nagamohan Das handed over this whopping 1,766-page report to the Chief Minister, Siddaramaiah. Now, initially, the report proposed splitting that 17% SC quota into 5 separate categories, each designed to target specific needs.
5 categories. So what were they?
Right. So first, there was 6% for the SC left. This was mainly for the media community. These are groups historically tied to traditional leatherwork, often facing really severe social stigma, and historically very underrepresented in government jobs.
Okay.
Then 5% for the SC right. This primarily benefited the Holeya community, who are mostly agricultural laborers. Now, they were still marginalized, but they had seen, relatively speaking, slightly better representation than the SC left, though still not enough.
Got it.
Third, 4% for what they called touchable castes. This included groups like the Lambani, Bohovi, Karama, and Karacha. While they are scheduled castes, The social stigma they face is generally considered less severe than for some other groups.
Okay, touchable castes. Interesting terminology.
Yes, it reflects the complex hierarchy even within the SE category. Then there was 1% allocated for the most backward communities. This was a group of 59 nomadic and extremely marginalized castes. Often, these communities lacked even basic government documents, facing, extreme disadvantages.
Just 1% for 59 communities.
Wow. And finally, another 1% for the Adi Karnataka, Adi Andhra, and Adi Dravida communities. These are specific subcastes, with a total population around 475,000, each with their own unique socioeconomic issues needing focused attention.
So a really detailed five-way split proposed by the commission, but then the government decided to adjust that, right? What was the thinking there?
Yeah, that's a key point. It raises that classic question. How do you balance incredibly detailed data with something that's actually practical to implement on the ground? So the state cabinet held a special meeting on August 19th, 2025. And in that meeting, they decided to streamline the framework down to 3 categories instead of 5.
Yeah.
The aim seemed to be creating a system that was, well, workable, more efficient perhaps, while still hitting the main goal of fairer distribution.
Okay, so how did those 3 categories look?
Right, so they kept the 6% for the SC left, still primarily focused on the Madiga community, directly tackling that historical underrepresentation.
Okay, that stayed the same.
Then they created another 6% category for the SC sorority. But this group was actually expanded from the initial proposal. It now included castes like Pariah and Mujera, who were sort of reclassified to try and ensure a more balanced representation within this tier.
Interesting. And the third one?
The third category was 5% for the touchable and other communities. This is where the main consolidation happened. It merged those touchable castes, the Lambani, Bovi, Karama, Karacha, with those 59 most backward nomadic communities that originally had their own 1%.
Oh, okay, so they were grouped together.
Exactly. And on top of that, the Adi Karnataka, Adi Andhra, and Adi Dravida populations, who initially had their own 1%, were now split equally between the SC left and SC right categories.
I can see how merging those groups, especially putting the most backward communities together with the relatively better off touchable castes, might cause some concern. Did people raise issues with that?
Oh, absolutely. That decision definitely sparked debate. Some activists and community members were concerned that lacing the most disadvantaged groups in with the touchable castes might actually dilute the benefits meant specifically for them. The fear that they might get overshadowed again just within a smaller category.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the cabinet's final decision, the consensus they reached, seemed to reflect this commitment to finding a structure they felt could be implemented effectively, while still making what they saw as significant progress towards fairer distribution overall.
So this cabinet approval on August 19th, that feels like the real turning point. How was the decision actually rolled out after that? And did the government do anything else to show they were serious?
Well, reports describe the cabinet meeting itself as suitful. Apparently, there was broad agreement among the ministers. You had key people like the social welfare minister, H.E. Mahadevappa, the law minister, H.K. Patil, the backward classes minister, Shivaraj Tangadagi, all seemingly on board. And crucially, ministers who actually represent various SC communities expressed satisfaction, which is pretty important for unity on such a sensitive issue.
Right.
Then, the chief minister himself, Siddaramaiah, made the official announcement in the Legislative Assembly the very next day, August 20th. He really emphasized that this policy was about delivering justice after this decades-long struggle. He framed it as Karnataka being a progressive state leading on social justice.
And they did more than just announce it, right? Weren't there some immediate actions?
Yes, exactly. To show immediate commitment, they announced 2 pretty significant things alongside the policy. First, a one-time age relaxation for upcoming government recruitment processes. That was huge news for job seekers. And second, they announced the withdrawal of legal cases against activists who had been involved in previous protests demanding internal reservation. That was a really powerful gesture of kind of reconciliation.
Wow, okay. So, pulling back those cases, that's a strong signal. What about actually putting this policy into practice? What were the immediate next steps, and what challenges were they looking at?
So the formal government order to implement the policy came out pretty quickly on August 27th, just a week or so after the cabinet nod. That order lays out all the specific separate deadlines, the actual quota percentages for different types of services, education, government jobs, everything needed to integrate this new classification system.
Yeah.
And critically, looking ahead, the government committed to setting up a permanent SC commission. something similar to the existing Backward Classes Commission. The idea is that this new commission will regularly review and update the reservation matrix. It's an acknowledgement that society changes, right? Social dynamics aren't fixed, so policies need to adapt too.
That sounds sensible, a permanent body. What about the immediate stuff?
Well, the biggest immediate step was restarting government job recruitment. It had been frozen since November 2024 while all this was being worked out.
Ah, so nearly a year's freeze.
Yeah, so lifting that freeze plus the age relaxation was a massive relief for aspirants. But, logistical hurdles definitely remain. Things like updating all the recruitment procedures across different government departments, ensuring everyone complies, that's a big task. And, of course, managing potential dissent. Some communities, like the Bovi and Banjara, had protested before. The government has really stressed they're committed to being transparent and that they consulted all 101 SC communities to try and build that consensus.
It really seems like Karnataka's approach here could be a template for other states facing similar internal disparities within their reserved categories. You mentioned they join a few others like Telangana, Haryana.
Yes, they do. But what makes Karnataka's move potentially stand out is that intense focus on data.
Right, the Nagamohan Das Commission survey.
Exactly. That comprehensive, almost granular survey work sets a really high bar for evidence-based policy.
Yeah.
And this focus on empirical data directly answers the Supreme Court's requirement. Remember, the court said any subclassification must be justified by quantifiable evidence. This helps make the policy much more legally sound, less vulnerable to challenges.
That makes sense. Build it on solid ground.
And also, that idea of the permanent SC Commission, that's quite forward-thinking. It basically builds in adaptability. It says, look, we know things change, and our policies need to be responsive. That proactive stance could genuinely inspire other states to move beyond older, more static affirmative action frameworks.
But even with all this data and planning, no major policy like this goes unchallenged, right? What are some of the criticisms or ongoing concerns?
Oh, definitely. The biggest one, as we touched on, is that consolidation from 5 categories down to 3. Some activists are still worried that merging the most backward groups with the touchable castes in that 5% bracket might dilute the intended benefits for the truly most marginalized.
Right, the dilution fear.
Yeah. There's also still some discussion around how exactly the Adi Karnataka, Adi Andhra, and Adi Dravida populations were distributed between the SC left and right categories, given their specific situations. And then there's the political angle, of course. The opposition BJP accused the Congress government of dragging its feet. Some Dalit rights groups remain a bit skeptical too, maybe pointing to past promises that didn't materialize. And understandably, that recruitment freeze caused a lot of anxiety for people waiting for jobs.
It's always crucial to hear from the people whose lives are directly affected. What kinds of reactions have you seen from community leaders or activists on the ground?
It's definitely a mix, which reflects how complex this is. For instance, H. Anjaneyya, who's a former social welfare minister and a prominent leader from the Madika community as he left, he basically celebrated it. He called it a victory, the culmination of a 3-decade fight, directly addressing the deprivation his community has faced for so long. So, real enthusiasm there.
Okay, so clear support from that side.
But then you have others, like Shiva Sundar, a well-known Dalit rights advocate. He expressed more caution, maybe some skepticism. He suggested the timing might have something to do with political calculations, maybe upcoming by-elections, a bit more wary.
Right, questioning the motives.
And then you have figures like L. Hanumanthaya from the Karnataka Madika Political Forum. He's pushing for really swift implementation now. He seems confident that the Supreme Court ruling clears the path legally, so it's about getting it done.
Urgency for action.
Exactly. And leaders from communities like the Bovi and Banjara, who fall into that consolidated 5% category, they're asking for more clarity. They want to know precisely how that 5% quota will be shared between the touchable groups and the nomadic communities lumped in with them. They want specifics on the distribution.
So, yeah, a real spectrum. Hope, victory, some skepticism, cause for speed, and demands for more detail.
Precisely. It really underscores that as Karnataka moves forward with this, the implementation is everything. The government's stated commitment to transparency, plus that permanent commission they plan to set up, those are positive signs for the long run. But, they'll need sustained effort to really address all these community concerns, to get the recruitment processes running smoothly, and crucially, to keep monitoring the outcomes to see if it's actually working as intended. That follow-through will be absolutely vital.
It really feels like after digging into this, for the people of Karnataka, especially the, over 11 million people in the
Yeah.
scheduled caste community, this policy isn't just some abstract bureaucratic change. It represents real, tangible hope, doesn't it? A chance, maybe, to finally start breaking free from these deep-seated historical inequities and actually access opportunities that have just been out of reach for generations.
Absolutely. And like Chief Minister Siddaramaiah said, the aim was to deliver justice for that long struggle. Whether that promise fully translates into lasting, measurable change on the ground, well, that depends entirely on the government's ability to navigate all these complexities we've discussed and to really stick to that commitment to social justice. If they can pull it off, it genuinely positions Karnataka as a real leader in trying to build more inclusive governance.
It really does make you think, you know? If this kind of data-heavy, constitutionally sound approach can start to tackle these incredibly entrenched disparities in one state, how could that model maybe be adapted or inspire action elsewhere, not just in India, but maybe even globally? What other kinds of historical imbalances, what other deep inequalities could potentially be re-examined, maybe even restructured if we brought this level of sort of rigorous, data-driven, but also empathetic approach to them? Lots to consider there. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks so much for joining us on this exploration today. We hope you feel a bit more informed, maybe a bit more engaged, and perhaps even a little inspired by what intentional social change might look like. Until next time.